co-director of the Hugh Boyd Journalism Diversity Workshop for New Jersey high school students here at Rutgers University. I welcome you. We're so glad that you're here. Before we begin, I'd like to also introduce our co-director for digital education, Professor Melissa Cordick, and our teaching assistant for this year, Professor Teresa Robinson. And now it's my pleasure to introduce to you our moderator for this evening, Lilo Staten of New Jersey Spotlight. And there's Lilo over there. I'll just very briefly tell you about her. She's an award-winning reporter who has covered local, state, and federal policy and politics in New Jersey and New York for some 2 decades, writing on topics ranging from the police beat in Brooklyn to the U.S. Senator Barack Obama's speech before the National Democratic Convention in 2004. And she also served as press secretary to Governor John Corzine and as communications director at a state environmental agency, and advocated for federal coastal restoration funding in the wake of Hurricane Sandy. Ladies and gentlemen, our moderator for this evening, Lilo Staten.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you everybody for coming out on a Friday night. I think this is a really important topic. I'm thrilled to be here. Just a quick intro, just to, by way of background. I saw a study the other day that was done in the United Kingdom that talked about stress levels among 18 to 25-year-olds. And the study had found that most, on average, they suffer 6 hours of being stressed out a day. 6 hours a day, if you think about that, that's a huge amount. I think there are a number of things that started to be done to address this. I know there was a story in the New York Times the other day that some people may have seen about high schools and undergraduate, elementary schools, grade schools that are providing mental health days. So there are some new solutions, but unfortunately I think adults and policymakers in particular are often decades, if not generations, behind what young people are experiencing. So I look forward to hearing more from the folks who are impacted most by this. Just to start, I'm going to introduce our adult panelists, and then we'll let talk a little bit about the student teams, and then I'll let them introduce themselves and tell you about their work, and we'll see a little bit of it. So, our adult panelists, Ezekiel Medina, a peer mental health educator with Rutgers University RU Hope, which is Rutgers University Health Outreach Promotion and Education Office. Maureen Brogan, Director for Youth Suicide Prevention Program through Rutgers University Behavioral Health. Shannon Glenn, a researcher with Real Prevention, which does mental health programs with school-age children. Andrea Sabic, Assistant Director for Prevention at the Institute for Prevention and Recovery at RWJ Barnabas Health, Community Prevention Department. And Chris Novick was an Assistant Director of Tobacco and Nicotine Treatment at the same RWJ program. So now I'm going to let the students, just before I do that, let me just tell you they worked in 4 groups, and they formed 4 teams. The blue team, which is first, they focused on, they did a project that talked about factors that contribute to stress and how people cope. The yellow team worked on sleep deprivation and how that contributes to stress. The green team focused on how news creates stress. I can certainly talk about that myself on a personal level. And the red team, last but not least, focused on procrastination. Purposely done last. So, without any more, you guys, why don't we start over there with the blue team.
Hi, my name is Rihanna Bartels-Quansa, and I'm from Princeton, New Jersey.
Hello, my name is Soraya Reed, and I'm from Roosevelt Park.
Hi, my name is Shreya Nageshwaran, and I'm from Freehold, New Jersey.
Hi, my name is Chelsea Naslis, and I'm from Newark, New Jersey.
So, our group
We have to go all the way down.
Hi, I'm Priyanka Sarkell. I'm from South Brunswick.
Hi, I'm Jade Bramwell. I'm from Jackson.
Good evening, my name is Alexander Benanti, I'm from Clifton.
I'm Erin Hellick, I'm from Old Bridge.
I'm Colby Samuels, I'm from Orange, New Jersey.
Hello, I'm Danielle Bongiovanni from Union, New Jersey. Hi, I'm Tanisha Vaughn. I'm from South Brunswick, New Jersey.
Hi, I'm Mafalda Francis, and I'm from Newark.
Hi, I'm Joshua Yee, and I'm from East Brunswick.
Hi, my name is Brian Ventura, and I'm from New Brunswick.
Hi, my name is Anna Kilpatrick, and I'm from Mansfield, New Jersey.
We're going to begin by showing a brief video to give a look at some of the findings of the students.
There's always stress in your life.
I definitely think it's way more stressful now than it is back then.
Besides your job, is there any other place or person that may stress you out?
My parents.
In my career, and I think a lot of careers, people are pressured to do the most work possible.
Back in school, I procrastinated by not doing my homework and not studying for tests.
How has procrastination impacted your success in school?
I feel like I have to study for a test, but I don't feel like it, or like homework or anything, and I don't feel like it. I don't want to do it, so I go on my phone. So my phone is what distracts me, and I procrastinate.
What role does technology have in your procrastination?
Oh, it's such a big role. It's either my laptop or my phone or like a tablet or something like that. So that's probably like the main way I procrastinate.
Children or child?
21 and 27.
18.
Do you worry about how watching the news might affect their mental health?
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I say yes because my kids they get anxious when they see things in the news.
Does reading the news make you anxious?
I don't read it.
How do you consume your news? How do you obtain it?
I get most of my news from either the internet or the radio.
Does it make you anxious?
Yes.
I say less activities, because then it gets you to do stuff in school and focus on
What activities do you do?
football, basketball, mostly arsenal sports.
I feel like that they should have school later in the day, but still keep it the same, just make it end a little bit later. But that conflicts with sports and stuff, so I don't really think there's you can't really solve it.
You know what, if I get into bed at 10, because I'm usually up at 5:30, if I could get into bed earlier, I could get more sleep, but that's hard to do by the time you get home from work and you're, all keyed up and you can't get to sleep.
So first off, do you guys think that you're sleep deprived? You don't get enough sleep that you need?
I think I get enough sleep.
Yeah, I definitely get enough sleep.
Okay.
We might not be your target.
events occur, does reading or watching the news that pertains to these subjects make you stressed?
Yeah, definitely makes me stressed. Definitely makes me kind of like feel defeated, sort of. Like sometimes I feel like there's nothing I can do, and that makes me upset. And then I get stressed because I feel like there's all these people who can do something to like fix it, and it makes me like upset.
Yeah, I just hate being out of the moment, and I hate thinking about things that I have to do. Like, and the only way to avoid that is to just do your stuff on time, and I think I've gotten pretty good at that, so.
My sleep habits, over the summer or during the semester?
During the semester.
During the semester, well, at least most recently, last semester was pretty rough for me. I would occasionally only get like 2 to 3 hours of sleep on the weekdays. Sometimes I would just pass the night like without sleeping, maybe take a nap in the afternoon whenever I come back from classes and whatnot. On the weekends, I would try to make it up the best I can.
Everyone I know pretty much worries about, their grades or their GPA because they have to keep a certain limit in order to stay in that program or yeah, so it's basically just like, how well they're doing on quizzes or tests. Yeah, that's probably the biggest stress.
So at this time, then, it will be our different teams who will introduce themselves and tell a little bit about the work that they did on this topic. Students?
Hi, my name's Rihanna Bartels-Kwanzaa, and I'm from Princeton. My role in this was interviewing and note-taking. Our topic focused on factors that contribute to stress. What was really interesting about this experience was that we interviewed a very wide range of people. Different ages, different genders, and this allowed us to recognize similarities and differences between different groups of people. It allowed us to learn how stress changes depending on where you are in life. I put together some numbers, and in total we interviewed 16 people. In the teenage range, so from 14 to 19 years old, we interviewed primarily females. We found that those between 20 and 30 years old were also mostly females. There was one male in the 30 to 40 age range and 2 females between the ages 40 to 55. Out of all of the people we interviewed, 9 of the 16 were female and 7 were males. Half of the people we interviewed were adults. 3 of the 16 had 1 or more children. So as you can see, there were people of different genders and ages and different stages of life, and interviewing all of these different people allowed us to recognize that they all had a common theme.
Hello everyone, my name is Soraya Reed and I'm from Rosa Park, New Jersey, and my role in this project was the interviewer. So when I was interviewing these different demographics, we approached each person with a line of questions that revolved around common stress factors. And one of the most reoccurring answers that we got from everyone was work. So schoolwork, work after college, adult work, family, things like that. And everyone constantly said work stresses them. And from 20-year-old Lily, a college student at Rutgers, she said her stress never really did enhance. She just started to stress about different things. So her stress went from schoolwork freshman year to having to worry about financial issues as a college student.
Hi, my name is Shreya Nageshwar, and I'm from Freehold, and I was the recorder for our group, and through our findings, we found that work didn't really increase as you got older, more so the magnitude of it just got greater. For example, in high school, when we interviewed a kid named Ben, we asked him what stressed him out, and he cited school. And at the high school stages, work is essentially just schoolwork, whether it's studying for ACTs, SATs, APs, and trying to keep your grades up and get into the college of your choice. That's what you have to do when you work. Then we interviewed a college student named John, and we asked him the question, if your stress was a person, what would they say? And he said, that person would say you're not going to make it. So this shows that in college, instead of in high school when you have more leeway when it comes to deadlines, in college deadlines are more strict and you have to get those in on time, and the work in college is much more difficult compared to the work you have in high school. So like I said, well, in high school maybe you could turn in an assignment a few days late and maybe get a few points taken off. In college there is not as much leeway, so that increases stress as well. And finally, we interviewed an adult named Lucille, who was in her 40 to 50s, and she talked about how stress has changed for her from simply just schoolwork to being about putting food on the table. So as you become an adult, the focus is not studying for ACTs, SATs, etc. The focus is trying to provide and support for your family and do well in your job to earn the money to provide for them.
Hi, my name is Chelsea Naslis and I'm from Newark. One particular interview that we had really encompassed the idea of work behind stress. So Sam and Steven were a young couple and they spoke a lot about the cycle of work, sleep, and repeat, and how once you get home, you don't have the time to really relax or do anything productive. It's straight back into that cycle. So Sam mentioned that the problem is that by the time you get home, you're too tired, like I said. And Steven said that there's not really any work-life balance and that he's really always at work. So we focused a lot on that theme of work and how it's probably the most common factor leading to stress. Something that we've all learned from this experience is that work is something that people of all ages have to do and deal with. And whether it's a 5-year-old given like division problems or an adult having to pay the electric bill or put food on the table, it's all work and we all have to deal with it. Work and stress change as we grow, but with trial and error, we can learn how to best handle work without stressing too much. Thank you.
Thank you, Justine. Next we have the yellow team.
Hi everyone, my name is Jay Bramwell. So for our study, we went to the Brunswick Square and we also interviewed Rutgers students as well, since our study was sleep deprivation. So I did the video work, and some of the information we collected was divided by age group and our stages of life. For instance, we interviewed 3 females that are in the age range of 13 to 14 and in middle school. For high schoolers, which are the range of 15 to 18, we interviewed 1 female and 6 males. The young adult/college kids were in the 18 to 25 category, and we interviewed 5 males and 4 females. And our middle-aged adults were from the age range of 35 plus, and there were 5 females and 1 male.
Good evening again. My name is Alexander Benanti, and my role in my project was shooting video and also conducting interviews. So when we started looking for a topic originally for the project, we picked sleep deprivation. We picked this topic because we saw that it was very common in a lot of any type of person. It's like, it doesn't matter your gender or, if you're, it's every person. A lot of people have it. So, and we also picked this because we could relate to it, especially during this week. However, when conducting man-on-the-street interviews with people in different age ranges, we found a common theme, and that theme was worry. So sleep deprivation is like a physical mechanism that's caused by something, and in a lot of the cases, the factor that contributed to the individual's irregular sleep patterns was worry. People worrying about schoolwork all the way up to their financial situations. So our theme is worry and how it contributes to sleep deprivation.
Hi again, my name is Priyanka Sarkel. I'm from South Brunswick. So we did mention that we divided our data into age ranges and stages of life. So some examples that explain our theme of worry that keeps people up during night and that would mainly perpetuate sleep deprivation. In the younger group of people, 13 to 14 years old and 15 to 18, so these are middle schoolers, high schoolers, and we mainly interviewed these people at the mall. So we found out that their worry revolves mainly around schoolwork. They prioritize homework, extracurriculars. They're not really thinking much about the future unless they're older and they're about 17, 18 and they're thinking about college. Something that they said, which was very prominent in our interviews, was that they wanted school hours to be shifted around so that they could be less sleep deprived. Mainly the high school students, they said they would prefer if school started later or sometime around 8:30 rather than the original 7:30 a.m. when a lot of people are running on 4 or 5 hours of sleep and they had just finished homework or studying or cramming for a test, things like that. And then as we moved on, we interviewed college students and who are from 18 years old to 25 years old. And then one specific teenager, the Rutgers student that not teenager, he was actually 23 years old. His name was Austin Yang. He talked to us a lot about his experiences with sleep deprivation and how staying up at night worrying about the assignments that he has to finish and how much he's been procrastinating or just worrying about the future in general, getting a job in the future, things like that, how that all adds up and he only ends up getting about 2 to 3 hours of sleep a night. Sometimes he pulls all-nighters. And he mentioned that all of this adds up to irritation and frustration. He is short-tempered, he can't function throughout the day, but it is a cycle of doom because the more he procrastinates, the more he worries about what he has to finish. And then he mentioned something that said that he does not see it as learning anymore, but he only sees it as getting it done and moving on. As for the adults, 35 plus, they're more worried, they stay up worrying about familial issues, financial issues, just things like that. One specific person we interviewed at the mall, her name was Robin. She recently retired and now her new job is being a lunch lady. So her income has significantly decreased. So she stays up worrying a lot about how she can handle all of her financial bills and how she can manage to keep everything going with her new income.
My name is Ola Tunji. I'm from Plainfield, and in cooperation with Alex, I also did cutaway footage and conducted the interviews. And going through all of our interviews, we came across one interviewee who we thought was really helpful because she could speak from both perspectives, the perspective of not being sleep deprived in college, but also being sleep deprived before in high school. So some of the things that she talked about was that in addition to the anxiety and short-temperedness that I can have, it also makes you feel very trapped, like within your schedule. She was talking about how she felt that she never had time to hang out with her friends or never had time to do anything because she was always in catch-up mode. Because she was so sleep deprived, she was moving significantly slower and she wasn't able to move it or perform at full capacity during her schoolwork. And then she gave us an alternative perspective of what she has now in college, where she's adapted her schedule so that she can go throughout the day and not have to worry about not having any free time or never being able to hang out with her friends or never being able to have a life outside of school, because we talked about how that's still important, even though you are our student right now and that's what's at the forefront of your responsibilities. It's important to keep a balance so they don't become overstressed, which can in turn then lead to more sleep deprivation. So she talked about how you should have a fixed schedule and never to compromise your schedule, meaning always going to sleep at the same time, no matter how much of your work is done. Because she talked about how you can always wake up a little bit earlier or do things on the way to somewhere to get something done. That way you don't compromise that schedule and you're not getting in the way of your work. And she talked about how, she also talked about how one of the things that was a huge transition for her from high school to college was, in addition to the workload, it's also a lot more free time. So with that free time people become a little more lenient with their responsibilities and they don't always get on top of their work. So they either prioritize things that aren't work, such as hanging out with their friends or going on social media. And then at the last second, they have to rush to get all their work done, but then they don't have time for sleep because since they're still tired from hanging out with their friends and doing all those things, they don't have time to sleep.
Thank you, the yellow team. Now we have the great team.
Hi, I'm Erin Hellick, and I'm from Old Bridge. I asked the questions during the interviews. We interviewed 16 people in order to distinguish the wide availability of news, of how the wide availability of news affects teenagers and 20-something-year-olds. In order to research this topic, we took to the public and interviewed 16 people, 12 women and 6 men. There were 6 college students, 3 teenagers, 2 people in their 20s, and 4 parents. The ages of the interviewees ranged from 11 to around 45. These people lived as close as East Brunswick to as far as China, with places such as Pennsylvania and Florida in between. According to a Life.com study, 65.3% of teenagers say the news stresses them out. We were able to figure out from where their stress arises. A common takeaway from our conducted interviews is that the news is just one area in their lives where they feel they have a lack of control. We essentially split up our findings from our interviews into 4 different categories.
Hello, my name is Colby Samuels. I conducted cutaway footage, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about general news. Basically, general news affects teens and young adults, their stress levels, their mental health, and their daily lives. So we interviewed 2 people. One of them was 26 years old, Raymond Sakar. Basically, he said that he feels that the news really highlights the polarity of today's world. We also interviewed a young woman named Jerry Polinio, and she said that she sometimes avoids the news because she feels that it puts a toll on her mental health, and she sees a lot of negativity on it. It doesn't necessarily affect where these events happen or whom they impact, because hearing these tragic stories sometimes does affect young viewers. Global news is the feeling, really gives you a feeling of having no control, and that's only magnified when the viewer can't create an impact in that situation, that tragic event. Jerry also said that she feels sometimes that people in her generation, they really just, they want to shy away from the news because they feel like when they can't lend assistance to these certain tragedies that they hear about, it also puts a negative effect on their mental health.
Hello, my name is Danielle Bongiovanni, and I was in charge of note-taking for the Green Team. So many young people are concerned about tragic events happening around the world in global news, but that does not mean that they don't care about more immediate problems that might impact them, things that are more personal. For example, Celeste Zhao, a 21-year-old woman, said that when she entered college, she became more interested in the news and more stressed by it because now news about the job market was applying to her and it would impact her future. Also, James Streeter, age 22, said that he focuses on the news that gives updates on the economy because that has a direct impact on him. Of course, while we were doing these interviews, we came across a few people who did not agree that news automatically was stressful when young people consumed it. But there was a common denominator for these outlying people. They all were linked by coping mechanisms. They all had found ways to properly balance their mental health with wanting to stay informed. For example, Raymond Saker mentioned that he always looks to the humanities section because that type of news is usually lighter and gives him a sense of hope.
Hi, my name is Tanisha Bott, and I'm from Southwest New Jersey, and for the Green Team, I was responsible for taking footage. So one interview that we conducted that basically encompassed our overall theme was with a young woman named Teresa Cartagena, and she was a 21-year-old student at Rutgers University. And what she said was that she described how exactly the news caused her to feel helpless, and it made her feel like she couldn't do anything to change what was in the story. So basically in her interview, she described a recent event that had happened a few days ago, in which her roommate described to her that there was a new Ebola outbreak in the Congo. And this is a direct quote from what she said. "I think it's the fact that I can't do anything. Like I could, but with the Ebola outbreak, what am I supposed to do? I'm not a doctor, I'm just a college student.
I could go and volunteer somewhere and raise money and post about it on social media to bring awareness, but that doesn't stop the fact that people are dying. So issues like inequality and injustice have been happening throughout history. It's not something new that we are exposed to, but what has changed in the past 20 years is the growth of social media and the internet. So like the second that something happens, we're able to find out about it. And just think, like whenever something newsworthy happens in front of us, we usually record it and like post it on Twitter, Facebook, whatever platforms we can. And it's basically the availability of news that is a true source of stress and how we can basically reach any story immediately at our fingertips. Thank you.
Thank you, Gracie. And last but not least, the red team.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mafalda Francis, and I was the note taker for Team Red. We interviewed various members of the public. In total, we interviewed 16 people, 10 female and 6 were males. There were 2 early teens, there were 5 high schoolers, 3 college students, and 2 people in their mid-20s, and 4 people in their 30s. Out of those 16 people, 6 said that technology specifically was a time-consuming distraction, and 3 people specifically mentioned how managing their time was a struggle because of procrastination. A lot of the young teens said that they procrastinated because of technology like phones, social media, playing video games. College students felt that despite being stressed in high school, college was worse for them. They had a lot more responsibilities and more freedom in managing their time. So with all those responsibilities and distractions, their schedules often became disorganized, causing a lot of procrastination. And for adults, they didn't really mention technology as a factor with time management, but recognized that it was a factor with their kids.
All right, hi guys, I'm Joshua from East Brunswick. So we went into this project with a focus on procrastination, and our line of questioning was really tailored to this. So we asked questions like, how do people procrastinate? Why do they procrastinate? How do people deal with this problem? And then for older generations, so for like 30 plus people, people at ages of 30 plus, we asked them about their children, and we asked them if they were to go back in time, if they were teenagers now, how would their procrastination habits be affected? And from their answers, we learned that it's not as much as procrastination, but more about time and more about time management. Because managing time is really important. You have to know how to allocate your time. If you misallocate your time, it leads to a lot of other problems, such as sleep deprivation mentioned earlier, and leads to a lot of stress as well. And I think this is really important for teens right now because there's social media and there's technology which can siphon all your time away.
Hi, my name is Brian Ventura. And while we were conducting these interviews at the mall and when we interviewed the students here at Rutgers, we had some one-liners, people who didn't really give us that much information to work with, but however, we did have some interesting personalities who really told us some amazing stuff. One of them was actually a 13-year-old, believe it or not. She was very articulate and very smart for her age, and she was telling us that although she really liked school and she loved studying, social media and technology like YouTube really takes up a lot of her time. And she found herself when she got home watching YouTube videos and catching up about the latest gossip on like celebrities and stuff. And that really took away time from her homework. And I was really interested, and we asked her like what came out of that. And she said that her grades were like actually dropping a lot. And it was so bad that even her mom had to take away her phone. And so not only was it stressing a 13-year-old girl out, it was also stressing her mom because she was worried about her grades and how she's doing. And another one was Blake. She's actually an intern for this program. And she was telling us some really great stuff, how her procrastinating, well, she said that in high school she really didn't procrastinate much because she said that there wasn't much to procrastinate. She said she found high school really easy. But once she got into college and it was much more difficult, she said that procrastination would really take a toll on her mental health and her physical health. She said that there would be times where she literally found herself losing hair because she wasn't doing what she was supposed to at the right time. And yeah, those were just only 2 of the many great stories that we found about procrastination. And I'll let Anna tell you guys about the one we thought was the most important.
So, hi everyone, my name is Anna Kilpatrick, and one example that we felt summed up the various ways time affects our lives was someone we interviewed, Justine. Justine is a 23-year-old master's student who spoke to her experiences with poor time management. So she asserted that though her procrastination habits presented initially in high school, they worsened dramatically in college, so much so that she had a 2.0 GPA in the first semester of her freshman year and was placed on academic probation. After this experience, however, she learned to manage her time and excelled, earning internships, research opportunities, and more, and is now, as stated, a master's student who knows both the consequences of procrastination and the merits of good time management. So having experience with both an extreme lack of prioritization ability and the consequences that result, as well as producing quality work through the cultivation of those skills, Justine stated that she feels she is more stressed now that she's proven herself as a capable student, but asserted that this was a fair price to pay for the larger impact she's able to make now. So we felt that this really proved that stress and effective time management are not necessarily antithetical, but do have a definite correlation.
Thank you, Red Team.
Wow, I just want to say I'm really impressed by what you guys did, and it's hard for me to imagine that we're talking to high school students here. So you guys are way ahead of yourselves, and I think these questions will also help you later in life. I mean, because now you have a good sense of how stress and builds as you go on and how it morphs. I want to let our adult panelists, as we're calling them, talk a little bit about how their work involves stress. So Ezekiel, let's start with you.
Hello everyone, my name is this on? Yes. Hello everyone, my name is Ezekiel Medina. I am a senior here at Rutgers University. I am representing Health Outreach Promotion Education, the Rutgers Hope office, which is under Rutgers Student Health. Rutgers Hope houses a bunch of peer education programs, of which I am part of one, the Peer Mental Health Educator Group. So peer mental health educators are trained in workshops that are accessible to all Rutgers students. And we go out and we work for fraternities or sororities or group organizations, school organizations, and different academic buildings here. We provide workshops for their students, for their staff. It's interesting that the topics covered here by the high school students are topics of our very own workshops. So we have workshops that range from myth-busting mental illness or mental health, to time management, to sleep, to stress, and all of the sorts.
Thank you. Maureen?
Good evening. My name is Maureen Brogan. I'm with Rutgers University Behavioral Health Care. I am the Traumatic Loss Coalition statewide coordinator. So that's like a fancy name for saying I get the calls when something really, really bad happens in the state of New Jersey for someone under the age of 24. So we respond to schools and colleges and sometimes daycares when there's any loss of life. And the loss of life could be because of a car accident, it could be an illness, it could be an overdose. Unfortunately, it can also be a suicide because people do take their own lives. So when we're not responding, we also do suicide prevention work. And that I have a passion for that. And I have a passion because we're losing our young people. Well, actually, across the board, we're losing people in the United States. Here in New Jersey, we are the 49th state, so we have almost the lowest suicide rate in the country. But when you talk to someone who has lost someone to suicide, I don't think that stat really matters at all. So we're out there working with colleges, we started with high schools, we're now in middle schools, and believe it or not, we're now in elementary schools. So I also sit for the New Jersey State Child Fatality Review Board, and we review every single death by suicide. And do we have 8-year-olds that kill themselves in New Jersey? We do. And yes, it's heartbreaking, and you feel for those families. And then part of it, though, it makes you want to get out there and change things. And we need to change things because our young people in particular are trying to navigate all of this. They're just trying to navigate life, and there's no book. Social media, and as a parent, I was like, oh, I didn't have that. When the phone rang, or if it was busy, do you guys know what a busy signal is? You know what I mean? Like, you could call my house, I was one of 7, you got a busy signal most times. So I was able to disconnect from people. I was able to just, if I didn't want to talk to people, take the phone off the hook and they couldn't reach me. That's not the case for our young people anymore. they're inundated. And if they don't answer, their phone's binging, 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 like, why aren't you answering me? Why are you leaving me unopened? I'm like, it took me a long time to figure out what does unopened mean, but now I know. So we're looking at too of raising our young people's resiliency and how you bounce back. And this may sound really, really strange for all of you, but what I hope is during your high school years, I hope you have opportunities to fail. And opportunities to fail, and I don't wish epic failures on anybody, I don't mean epic ones, but we need opportunities to mess up. We need opportunities to not make that the soccer team that we wanted to make on because it's going to nationals, and maybe not get into this high school or college, because we need to learn that we can bounce back. And you guys can bounce back, and that's really what I love about the job that I do, is really tapping into how do we build resilient people. So, and I took too long, didn't I? I'm sorry. I'm cutting myself off.
Thank you. Shannon, next.
Hi, my name is Shannon Glenn. I'm actually a graduate of Rutgers School of Communication and Information, and I'm currently finishing up my master's at Rutgers School of Public Health. I'm here representing the company I work for called Real Prevention. We create prevention education programs for youth, young adults, and even parents. One of our programs we're actually about to roll out nationwide. It's called Real Media. What Real Media does is actually teach young adults how to effectively look at the media, advertisements, how advertisements are created, and how they are actually created to manipulate people just like you. And in the end, we just want kids to kind of be effective communicators and to be able to look at the messages around them so that they know how to cope better with what they see out there in the world, especially on social media. And our other program is actually in all 50 states and over 50 countries internationally. And it's all about coping mechanisms and stress, and how really young adults have different ways to cope and different stressors in their life, and it's really about figuring out what works for you and how to become the best you without feeling all this pressure of the world around you.
Thank you. Andrea?
Thank you. My name is Andrea Sabic. I'm the Assistant Director of Prevention for RWJ Barnabas Health Institute for Prevention and Recovery. My part of the agency oversees the substance use prevention programs in Ocean County and then some other sites across the state. I don't, full disclosure, do not work directly with young people. I manage the grants and oversee the staff that actually does the programs and whatnot for the agency. A lot of what I do is manage grants, and that is very data heavy. So the first thing I want to say is congratulations to all these young people in designing your projects and making sure that the subjects that you interviewed were a broad representation and how you broke down the data, because those are the kind of things that I look at, not only to plan programs, but also to evaluate programs. So we look at 4 substance use priorities: underage drinking, misuse of prescription medications across the lifespan, illegal use of marijuana, and tobacco and e-cigarette use. And that's where we're seeing some big jumps in youth substance use. I was speaking with one of my staff today. She is the coordinator of our youth tobacco action groups, and she's gotten very, very involved in media work. So you and I are going to have a conversation afterwards with a project that's being rolled out statewide. It's a youth-led project and with exactly those same themes about how the media often manipulates a younger audience. And we have seen that come to fruition with the vaping epidemic. And so those are the kind of things that we do through the agency, and then basically harnessing that power that you all have. You have so much power, far more than you even realize, and to be able to harness that for positive change. But Megan was saying to me today, as the result of her research, that this generation is far less likely to take risks than mine or Chris's or my children who are in their 30s. They are using drugs less. They are not drinking and driving at the rates that we did. They are far less likely to engage in risky sexual behaviors that the generation before them did. But the one area where we're losing ground is in the e-cigarette use and vaping. So I'm kind of setting up my coworker Chris, because that's his wheelhouse, and I'll let him talk a little bit more about that.
Thank you. My name is Christopher Novick. I'm the Assistant Director of the Nicotine and Tobacco Treatment Program for RWJ Barnabas Institute for Prevention and Recovery. Just a little bit of an overview about the program that I oversee. We were fortunate enough to be funded by the New Jersey State Department of Health to open up quit centers throughout 6 counties in the state of New Jersey. They're in Essex, Union, Middlesex, Monmouth, Ocean, and Mercer counties. It allows us to place a tobacco treatment specialist and nicotine treatment specialist in each one of those counties, and that is the only thing they focus on. And I think it's a great initiative because nicotine and tobacco use, especially in the world of prevention and recovery, always took a backseat to, you always hear about opiate overdoses and any other drug, but cigarettes and nicotine, they kill 500,000 people a year. It's 500,000 people a year. And this initiative allows those that had 15, 20, 30 quit attempts to actually get the help they need. And we actually do offer free nicotine replacement therapy for our program, which is the patches, gum, and lozenges for anybody that enters into our program. But it's really interesting, everything that you've done so far, it's a great job. I'm very analytical, much like Andrea, so it was great to hear all the data-driven that you had. But again, she brought up the vaping and the nicotine usage of the younger generation. And I mean, we could talk for about 8 hours on that because it's such a polarizing topic, especially in the news today. But it relates to almost every single thing that you've talked about. For example, the electronic nicotine delivery devices that we're seeing, the Juuls, the vapes, the mods, the cartridges, everything that you see, nicotine is a stimulant that could lead to sleep deprivation. When you're procrastinating, what are you doing if you're smoking a Juul or if you're using a vape, if you're smoking? You could be using a nicotine delivery device throughout any of the topics that you've talked about. And really that's what our program addresses, and we address all ages. And what's very interesting is that we're getting into a lot of the high schools, and some students are actually approaching our program and saying, I didn't realize how addictive this was and how much it's negatively affecting my life. And we actually have students involved in our program, going through our treatment program, to not quit cigarettes or not quit traditional tobacco like we saw. I've been in this field for 6 years. Even in the past 6 years, it's always been cigarettes, but we're actually enrolling people in our program that are using these devices. And it affects the whole spectrum of everything you talked about. You could involve an electronic nicotine delivery system in that. So I could be here to answer any questions or help out in any way with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I think there are a couple things that really struck me from some of the interviews that you guys did. Some of the ways that stress impacted people that you met. In particular, the guy who had got 2 to 3 hours of sleep during weeknights, hair loss as a result of being stressed out. I wonder if we could just go down from our sort of adult panelists real quick, and I'm just curious what's sort of the most striking thing you've seen as a result of stress in the people that you work with. Ezekiel, you want to start?
Sure. So we have a sleep workshop that covers pretty much everything about how to manage your sleep schedule, how to make sure that you are on stimulants like coffee we speak about mostly, because that's a big thing for college students to drink coffee or Monster or Red Bull and study all night. And we really encourage students to be mindful about sleep and how it pertains to their health, their mental health and physical health. And I think that when we give our workshops, there are a lot of extreme things that we hear. I think one of the most extreme things I've heard about someone who didn't really sleep a full night's sleep for 2 days straight for college. And I think that that's pretty common and it's not spoken about, but it is something that's very serious, and it does have negative and adverse health effects for your mental health and physical health. But we do have workshops that do cover about how to also manage your time. So we have sleep and we have time management that's separate from that. But for our time management workshops, we always say that include sleep in your daily schedule as if it is one of those things that you can't miss, because it is so important.
So also with the stress aspect and with procrastination, a lot of people don't know that procrastination is, we pay attention in the clinical field as someone who may have some anxiety issues. And one of the reasons too is that we can become so anxious or overwhelmed or so stressed that we start putting things off because we're so afraid of like the grade we're gonna get on a paper that we start worrying about that grade before we even got to write the paper. So what we try to do is fool ourselves that stress really isn't there, so we procrastinate by not doing the paper because then we don't have to worry about the grade. So, and then we get ourselves in this negative cycle. So that's one thing that a lot of people don't understand or see, that relationship between procrastination and anxiety. And when we see stress and anxiety, it comes across in a whole bunch of different ways for different people. You see people who just like shut down, and you almost see sometimes like a depressive aspect of it. Then you see other people that are very anxious about it. You can see agitated people when they're stressed. And then you also see that like stress could be a positive thing if we manage it. So you also see people perform like there's no tomorrow when they're under a lot of stress. The problem is that's a sprint, and life is a marathon. So we can sprint for a little while under stress, and that might be a positive thing, but we're not going to be able to keep it up for that amount of time. So that's really something too that we need to look for. Some of those other things that maybe we don't always say or we see right away when we're thinking of stress.
I think definitely one of the biggest things is listening to people say, well, I stayed up all night, I only got 2 hours of sleep, I just drank coffee all night. When you do transition and get to college, it's a lot different than in high school. I just want to kind of emphasize, do not put things off just because you can have a cup of coffee and stay up all night. The caffeine will make you more stressed, you'll become more anxious, and it's better to just go to sleep, get a good rest, and wake up early and do whatever it is you need to do. And if you are feeling that stress that might lead to procrastination about an assignment, just kind of chunk things off bit by bit. So, maybe I'll just read this, these 2 pages, or I'll write this paragraph of a paper and I'll come back later. But I think the more that you kind of like look ahead and get super stressed about things, it's easier to kind of put things off or just decide, oh, I'll stay up all night and come back to this, another day. So I think just getting ahead and figuring out what works for you, but also making sure that you're paying attention to what others are doing, and just because everyone else stays up all night doesn't mean that you should do that as well.
Andrea, Chris, what about you?
So when we're doing a look back, when we're writing grants and collecting data and whatnot, one of the things that is getting a lot of attention now, a lot of traction in the media, is the concept of adverse childhood behaviors. Particularly my colleagues who work in the recovery community, when they're working with people that are in recovery or trying to maintain recovery, part of that is actually, it's a long-term healing process, and they're looking back at the things that happened in their childhood. If you want to look it up, you can Google ACEs, and it's it's like 10 questions, but it asks about the environment of your childhood growing up. What we're seeing in young people that are experiencing that in real time now is it manifests itself sometimes in a lack of emotional regulation. I'll have school people that'll say this certain group of kids that they're working with will go from 0 to thermonuclear like that because somebody looked at them the wrong way. They don't always have the ability they're triggered very easily because of, and the reason I'm going down this road is because we've been talking about stress, but then we've been also mentioning anxiety, and there's a huge difference, and high levels of anxiety can contribute to those types of responses. That's also where the cortisol, your body starts producing cortisol, and that can also have some long-term effects as well. We see with some of those kids is that they do get involved with drugs and alcohol. They are at higher risk. We consider that a risk factor for problem behavior. There are the students that are more likely to self-medicate to try and control that by whatever means possible. So that's kind of the extreme population, but those are some of the issues that we do see.
I'll just echo Andrea a little bit here. I think you really hit the nail on the head when, I forget who said it, but you said that everyone's stressed out, whether they're from 5 years old, 6 years old, to adults with families. And from there, everybody finds a way to cope. And not everybody copes in healthy ways. Some people work out, and some people turn to drugs, alcohol. And what we see in this conversation with high school students in the younger generation, they're using nicotine at much higher levels, especially with the electronic nicotine delivery systems. We call them Ns, you know them as Juuls or mods, vapes, whatever you want to call them. And that's a very unhealthy coping mechanism. And even when you're stressed out, they may feel like it's helping, but it's really not. It's creating another cycle. It's creating an addictive cycle, which is going to end up stressing you out with withdrawal symptoms down the road. And these devices, they're built to get you addicted quickly. They use nicotine salts. It's a synthetic nicotine that's derived in a lab. It's for a quicker delivery system. It's more concentrated. But yeah, it's all about these coping mechanisms that we've all discussed. And again, not everybody picks the healthiest option. Not everybody goes to work out or takes a walk or hangs out with friends. And again, it can relate to sleep deprivation. It's a stimulant. It can relate to everything we've talked about today.
I'm curious about suicide in particular. And I mean, I see that as sort of an ultimate end to being extreme, or one potential ultimate end to being overstressed and anxious. I'm curious from our younger panelists, does anybody, have you known people who have committed suicide in your high school? Is this something that you encounter at the high school age? And then I wanna talk to you, Maureen, a little bit about what the state has seen and what the statistics show. But I'm just curious. I mean, is this a conversation? Are people talking about it that you know of? Is this something that comes up in your age group, or you think it's a little older? Anybody? Yes, comes up now, or in your age group? Yes. Yeah. I mean, so there is it's not too young to be in high school and be thinking about that. Maureen, yeah.
So actually for my video project, it was focused on suicide, and it was really interesting because I feel like it's a subject that people are so afraid to talk about, but it is something that you have to talk about, especially when it happens in your school community where you're supposed to feel safe and it's like right there, so you can't avoid it at a certain point. And it affects people around you when you know that person, when you see certain stuff. And I think it's important for schools to be able to come together and say that this is affecting the students, and it can affect grades, it can affect their lifestyle. And obviously I think it should be important for schools to want to start a conversation and be able to be strong enough to tackle something as scary and frightening as suicide.
Interestingly enough, Interestingly enough, there is the governor just signed a bill that requires a new level of mental health education in schools, so that theoretically there will be some programs developed that are supposed to be age appropriate throughout school to talk about suicide and mental health issues and behavioral health issues in general. So that may be starting earlier. Sorry, yes.
Projects that these students have worked on the video side of the journalism projects that are being done here are just phenomenal. I mean, they've done an excellent job. These stories have come from their hearts. There's information in them that a lot of adults have not considered or could be confirming for them in the work that they're doing. So I would really urge everyone here, especially the adult panelists, to invite people in on Sunday. What time is that going to be?
Beginning at 1 o'clock.
At 1 o'clock to see these stories that they worked on, because they're really newsworthy and they're television worthy. Thank you.
Soraya, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback off of what Mafalda said, but honestly, having these conversations in the school and talking about something that's so scary as suicide actually makes a student more comfortable to approach a teacher or a counselor, because if no one's talking about it, then someone who's dealing with those issues might feel as if there's something wrong with them. But if you have everyone around you saying it's okay to come get help, it's okay to find out what's the root or the source of the problem, then they are more likely to go and get help and stop it before anything happens. So just, after this whole thing, it just takes 2 seconds to sit down with your child or someone that you know who's dealing with something and be like, hey, are you okay? Because just those 3 words can really change anything.
You're nodding when tell me
we're given the whole, yeah, you go. Like it gives you, like when you're doing this work in suicidology, it gives me a lot of hope to be like, you guys get it, and we're going to right now the rates are going this way, and when I hear you speak, I feel like, no, we have a chance to turn that around and start seeing the rates go down because you guys are open to having the conversation. Like, I wear my little pin here from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, which is start the conversation. Like, and also too, about saying, are you okay? Also too, it's okay not to be okay sometimes. You know, we're not all okay all the time. And that, you know what, we gotta cut ourselves some slack. And some, you know, we can reach out to people. It's about connectedness. It's about, there's a lot of help out there, but sometimes it's like, we like shame people into asking for it. It's like we have all these programs and then no one going to take advantage of them. But especially in the schools, it was really difficult. The Traumatic Loss Coalition used to like beg to be invited in, because we won't go in unless we're invited in. And there was a myth that, oh, we're not gonna talk about it, because if we talk about it, we're gonna plant the seeds. That's a myth. No one ever planted the seed for someone to take their own life. People might have had those thoughts already, and if we don't talk about it, we're actually more at risk and at danger of that person acting on it than if we have those open conversations. So you were right on target with saying, we need to talk about it. We need to say it's okay not to be okay. So, yeah.
In the context of suicide, which happens to be like a very common result of the topic of my video project, which is using social media and day-to-day interaction to trace the origin of sexual harassment and what's wrong with how we address it today. So similar to what Soraya said, and what
Maureen, I was called an adult today. So twice I was called an adult, so I was like, this is a great night.
And what was addressed on the panel. A lot of times with things that people don't want to talk about, that in turn kind of increases the rate, increases the occurrence of that happening, because people know that they're not going to get reported for it, or they know that they're not going to be addressed or be confronted on it, because people don't want to talk about it. It's something uncomfortable that makes people on edge and makes people feel like, oh, this is not the right time, or oh, no one's going to believe me, or something like that. So suicide is definitely related to, I think, a lot of topics here, but also specifically my topic, because a lot of people, it's a very personally degrading thing to be sexually harassed. So that a lot of times can lead to that sort of depression, that level of depression that would eventually become suicidal thoughts.
I just had something really quickly.
Hold the mic closer to you.
Okay, so unfortunately, this is something that my school had to deal with last fall. There was a student who did decide to commit suicide. And what happened was, I didn't personally know him. He was in the senior class and I was a junior. But he was a new student, so I guess the pressure of coming to a new school really got to him. And what happened was, it really just shows, because of that event, it really just shows that suicide is not just an urban legend. It can happen anywhere. My town is pretty affluent. There's quite wealthy people there, and the stigma is usually there, and people usually think that in like a richer community, it's not a problem. And this event basically shows to everyone that suicide is a problem anywhere, anytime, to anyone, and that you should never be afraid to go get help. And as someone already pointed out, there is a stigma that people think that if you talk about a problem, then it'll lead teens to commit suicide, which is, I personally feel like, is not true. If you have the right information, the right education, then you're more likely to not do it. You will have the information, and you'll be more safer.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say one thing. A lot of kids in my area, I think about like 3 or 4 boys have killed themselves in the last 6 months, and they were all, to certain people, I guess, like they had like everything going for them. They had a life, and for me, I think a lot of people don't talk about the stigma of girls. Most times when people think of killing themselves, I think a lot of times people think of just girls, and I don't think a lot of people talk about boys as well. It's something that I think it should be talked about way more.
And actually, boys die by suicide at a rate of 4 times more than girls. Females attempt more, but actual suicide deaths are documented as 4 times more for males.
So clearly schools are talking about these things more. I think Ms. Collins shared with you guys an article that I read too, that was about some other states that have started to have mental health days, where you can call out sick from school for mental health days. I'm curious if there are other things, and Rutgers obviously has a whole slew of programs, thanks to Ezekiel, their programs in schools. What else should we be doing? I don't know if you guys, if anybody here wants to start. What's missing? I got your name in the red, sorry.
Hi, I'm Priyanka. Personally, when I read that article, I thought it was a good idea, but I think it's kind of missing the point, because when you take a day off from school, you miss, in high school, you miss so much. And then you have to come back and make it all up. And that just adds to the list, to the unfinished list. And I feel that, I understand the good intentions behind it, but when the problem is that people are taking these mental health days because there's so much pressure at school, I feel like something in the school system has to change, versus just letting kids stay at home and having to complete all this extra work later, which just adds to the cycle of more stress.
It's a question of time management. You end up with more problems. Yeah. Ezekiel, what do you think if you guys had an unlimited budget, what would you want to add at Rutgers?
I think,
or beef up. What would you expand or add?
I think there needs to be a shift in the culture of how we view work in school. I think that there needs to be a shift in a culture on how we view wellness and how we view health. I think that we aren't having a holistic view of health. I think it's very physical. Our education has taught us that we need to exercise and eat well, but there are other things that we need to do for our health. And I think that I'm in the Honors College. The Honors College implemented a student wellness committee out of a wellness task force, because it was being brought to our attention that our students, who are very high achievers, were not well mentally. And so to meet that challenge, we met with different professionals from different parts of Rutgers, and we implemented our committee, and our committee had results from surveys conducted from the students about sleep, time management, all of the sort, and we have been working to implement programs to prevent getting to the point where the stress is too much. And I think a big part of it is creating a culture of wellness where we can talk about these, we can have these conversations, we can talk about these topics, we can talk about suicide, we can talk about mental health days, we can talk about professionals taking mental health days, role modeling that behavior, and making sure that mental wellness is a big part of our health. And I think that if we could continue to implement that. So Rutgers has, the Wellness Committee operates on the 9 dimensions of wellness model, and we include financial wellness, to mental wellness, to physical well-being, to occupational wellness. And so we focus on different areas of our lives where we can work to make sure that we are functioning well for ourselves. And I think that if we could implement that campus-wide, university-wide, that would make a lot of change.
Interesting is that I did a story about a medical program, an osteopath program in South Jersey, where the students actually took it upon themselves to form a wellness. These were medical students, and who are notoriously stressed out and have too much, and they recognized that, and they said we need to form a wellness committee and figure out a way to relieve the stress, and that was on top of their regular schedule. But they found out that it actually, the activities that they did together directed at wellness helped them, even though it was one more thing they had to do in their day or week or whatever. I was curious, anybody from the audience, things that would help parents or things that you'd like to see as far as stress reduction for students?
I'm a school counselor and I'm a parent of students.
What am I? So you know these things.
I do.
Yeah.
And I work in a school that's kindergarten through 8th grade, and unfortunately we've had those situations, suicide threats, even just self-harming behaviors.
And an idea that was posed towards the end of our school year was schools literally creating a physical space to be a safe space. It doesn't always mean that when you're stressed at school, you need to be sent home. Because sometimes that can leave the children feeling alienated, like they've done something wrong because I must be, because I'm getting sent home from school. So the idea of, can schools create an actual room that can be like a safe space? It's almost like if you're in a therapeutic environment, they'll have the padded room. So it's not a padded room, but it's just a place where you can go and you can not let it out without the fear of, am I gonna get in trouble? Did I say something that's gonna get me sent home? So I don't know how schools will do that. I think of the school that I work in, and we're like busting at the seams of space, and I don't know where, but I'm like fervently thinking about that would be ideal, where kids can have a place to go to, and it doesn't have to be because I had a bad day, I go home. Sometimes home is actually not. Sometimes home is a source of stress for them.
What about students? Yes. Oh, my sorry.
I could go like days for things I wish the school would add, but one thing that my school recently did that I wish they had my freshman year was now they are starting to take actual students and train them to be able to talk student on student. So no offense to counselors, but I think it's just so hard to talk to an adult sometimes. Like sometimes I just want to talk to my peers and maybe kind of bounce off of their energy. So if there's a way that the school can not really, full blast train students, but be able to give students information so they can help their friends. Because I've had times where my friends have come to me with their problems and their stress, and I'm like, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to say. So it's just like, in a way, could we find a way to incorporate the students in distressing each other? Because we're the ones who are really going through it, to be honest.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that contrary to Priyanka's point, she talked about how when you have those mental stress days, or mental health days, it causes you to miss a lot of work. But I think in terms of a student's long-term, or just a person's long-term stress, I think missing one day of high school might be worth it so that they can take a second to step away from the situation they're in and better themselves. And I know as a high school student, I would definitely appreciate maybe not being sent home, or maybe just being relieved of some of the responsibilities at school. Like I know at my school we have a counseling office, and students are allowed to go to the counseling office whenever they feel like they're going through something that they would like to speak to someone in a confidential way. And maybe that's what a mental health day is. You just spend a lot of time or a lot of the day with those counselors, and they're all professionally trained like counselors, so they have like a confidential seal as a part of their job description. I think that would be kind of important to help students in terms of long term, because I would appreciate that, because I know at my school we don't even have snow days. So to have something like a mental health day, I think that would be really important to think more long term. Then people think they think more something happens and then they react, but I think it's important that we think more of like a long term stuff doesn't happen in the future, and we don't have to keep reacting to suicide attempts and keep reacting to people being depressed and all the other things, and kind of just avoiding it in the future.
The prevention piece. Yeah. Sorry, over here.
I think that if a student is taking a mental health day and staying home from school, then that means they don't feel that the school is a safe environment for them and that there's nowhere they can seek help. So I think something that seriously needs to be revamped are guidance counseling departments. I'll give a quick example or two. I went to a very small elementary school. We did not have any semblance of a guidance department. So I love to be the mom friend, and I know a lot of people like to be the mom friend. They like to feel responsible for their friends. But an 11-year-old should not be talking their friends out of suicide because they don't feel like they have anywhere else to go. An 11-year-old should not be wondering why their friend was not in school that day. That is not something any child should have to go through. And another quick example for high schools, my friend goes to a larger high school. They have a guidance department, and his guidance counselor was aware that he struggles in school. His guidance counselor was aware that he was not always in the best state of mind. When my friend was talking about colleges that he wanted to go to, the guidance counselor said to him, "Don't think about those. You're not going to get in. focus on the community college. So imagine what might have happened if he was not in such a positive headspace that day. Imagine what might not have happened if he had not had friends like me or his other friends to talk to about what had happened. We need serious change.
Thank you.
There's a lot of things that I wish my school could do, and it's very frustrating, especially when we're having convocations for other issues, but except for mental illness. But I think something really important is talking more about it in the classroom, educating more. I mean, every single year we always have health, you know, and we're always talking about sports or your physical body. But for me, at least, 8th grade, we spent maybe not even a quarter talking about mental health, and at least that I remember. And I think it's important that we talk about it, especially since for me and a lot of my friends, when we think of our guidance counselors, we don't necessarily think of a safe space. We think more of like your future, somebody to get a recommendation from, someone to help you with college and stuff like that. So I feel like if we start talking about it more in classrooms, it'll be able to like open up the conversation for mental illness, and your mental illness, or like your mental health is always changing throughout those 4 years, so it can't just be for 1 quarter, it can't just be for 1 year. You need, and especially like we were talking about how many people struggled with the transition from high school to college. I think if we sat down with seniors and we were like, okay, this is what you could expect from college, here's what you shouldn't do, maybe here are some coping mechanisms. If we addressed it, then maybe people wouldn't be so stressed, maybe people wouldn't have such messed up schedules, maybe people wouldn't like decide to do certain things that they might regret later on because they just couldn't handle all of the stress. So I think it's important that we start to address like everything that's going on with our educations and in the classroom.
If we have someone over here, and that's awesome.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Piggybacking off of like what Mafalda said earlier, another thing that I think should be addressed is mental health in relation to how teachers can address it. My dad is a teacher himself, so I feel like teachers aren't really trained, not always trained to have those conversations. And if you're spending so much time with those students and you're not addressing it, then it can make the problem even worse. So that's another thing. Besides the students themselves speaking up, teachers should also be trained to maybe instigate those conversations.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Okay.
It's okay. Brian. So I not only think it's like a matter of talking about it in like school and work. When I grew up, I was born in the Dominican Republic, and I grew up speaking Spanish. I didn't know a word, or like I didn't know what to say to my parents when I felt sad at 8 or at like 7. I didn't know how to express how I felt sometimes. And even when I came to the United States when I was like 9, I grew up like learning English and not knowing how to express myself in that language either. And it's not, so I think it's not only like a matter of counselors and teachers being educated on how to help students, it's also our parents. Like I know I grew up not very close with my parents, so I didn't feel comfortable talking to them, so why would I feel comfortable talking to a counselor?
Do you think that's a problem? I mean, that was one thing I read in the survey that I was talking about earlier, is that I think 2/3 of the students surveyed said that at some point they had a problem and felt like they didn't have anybody to talk to about it. Is that something, I mean, do you all feel like you have people you can talk to, or are there some times when you don't have anybody? Just curious, anybody want to? Yes, go ahead, sorry.
I feel like sometimes a lot of teenagers don't feel like they don't have anyone to talk to. And just like to talk about guidance counselors and to reiterate on that, I feel like guidance counselors really should be taught more on how to handle students. I went to guidance one time to talk about stress, and my guidance counselor literally told me to get a fidget spinner and then like send me back to class. And if I hadn't been so okay in my mental state and just wanted to simply talk about stress, that wouldn't have helped me at all. So I think that if you feel like you don't even have an adult to trust, an adult to talk to, you aren't, sometimes you may not feel like you can talk to your peers either, because you're like, if this adult knows nothing, what are my peers gonna know? How are my peers gonna help? So.
Jade. Do you have a mic? Oh, sorry.
So both times I was bullied at 9 and at 14 and 15.
Hold the mic closer.
I didn't feel like I could come to my mom, not because I didn't trust her. I was just more so scared for what I guess she was going to say, or like the reaction that she would have, because I know my mom will, my mom is very overprotective, so like she'll do anything for me. So like for me, I just didn't feel like I didn't want anything to be done because then you're called to snitch or that type of stuff. And going back to having a guidance counselor, when one of my teachers, she decided to not put in our grades until the day before marking period ended and that type of stuff, they're like, okay, we'll go look into it. Or we always send like, we'll talk about teachers that don't care about their students and they don't try to focus on it, because most times I just feel teachers are there for a check and then they leave. So, yeah.
All right, so I'm Josh. So even though like a lot of the stress is placed on people that are like just struggling with their work and struggling to stay by, I like to talk about some people who are like at the top, who like can get their work done. I was reminded of this by the comment earlier, how like the honors college students suffer from a lot of stress. And like, it's not the regular college, but it's people at the top. I think that's happening a lot at our school. I'm one of the top students at our school, and like a lot of the time, I don't have anyone to talk to, because when I get good, because there's a culture that school is more of a competition than like actually learning. You have to do better than everyone else. You have to get that A+ on the test. You have to get that 100. If you don't, a lot of your friends will laugh at you. A lot of your friends will think you're dumb. A lot of your friends will just belittle you, sort of. And I think that's really bad, because now you can't talk to people. Your friends that like you're supposed to socialize with just think you're dumb for getting a bad grade when you normally get good ones, and you just feel alone. And some adults really don't get that either, because they just see you getting good grades, and like seeing one bad grade doesn't mean much to them either.
We have a comment here in the audience.
Okay.
Hello? Yeah. My name is Sylvia Francis, and I am Mafalda's mother. First of all, I was waiting for a long time to ask my question, which is wonderful. Everybody has a lot to say. I wanted to go back to the article, even though I'm not familiar with it, but there are countries in Europe, and I know there's some states, even though I don't know which one, that school runs just 4 days a week, or even 3 days a week. So I don't know, I wanted to ask you, what do you think, will that be a solution, instead of having that day, and then you were gonna have that problem of having to make it work? And the other thing that I wanna ask is, if school will ask you for extra activities, do you have any ideas of something fun? Because we all know that schools have after-school activities, but a lot of times I think that no one wants to enroll, or very little students want to enroll. Do you have ideas, or will that be something that will help you to relax and to not stress in school? Okay, so 2 questions.
Anybody? Let's start here.
So I think with the idea of extracurricular activities, I think that's difficult to kind of say what is a fun activity, because fun to me is debate team, but that's not fun to a lot of people. So I think it's just about finding something that fits sort of the situation that you're in and what you want to do. And I think that something that really allows that to happen is schools giving students the liberty to start those clubs, to supporting those extracurricular activities and things like that, regardless of how, I guess, important that is in what they, view as like the grand scheme of their school. So I think that administrative support is really important in trying to make sure that schools are cultivating an environment that allows all students to kind of de-stress in a way that's conducive to them.
Someone down here had a question. Right, we need the mic, or go ahead. Did you have one?
Yeah, I was gonna talk about before when you were talking about like having people to talk to. I think
yes.
When sometimes students feel don't feel great talking to people, particularly when it comes to grades. Because like Josh said, if you take a test that maybe all your classmates ace and you come back with a grade that's not up to that standards, you wouldn't feel too comfortable going to talk to them about it because they're going to make fun of you. And particularly if you go to your parents to, say you get a bad grade on a standardized test, your parents only just see the number. They don't really see what you did to put into it. They haven't taken the test. They don't really understand it, like what it was like to go through it. So they only see the number. So I think for students, it's very difficult to approach them when it comes to getting bad grades as well.
Interesting, okay. There, and you want to come over here?
Back to what Mafalda's mother said. Reducing the days to 3 to 4 days, I really don't think it would help personally. It's just, I think it's something within the school system. Like, all right, I have 3 to 4 days, but I still have 7 days worth of work. So it's like, how am I gonna fit 7 days worth of work into 3 to 4 days? Now I'm beyond stress, it's done at that point. So I think it's something just deeper than taking days off or reducing the days. It's really just the amount of responsibilities that they're giving us as 14 to 17-year-olds. And then for activities, I really don't know. I still personally enjoy the little stuff like recess. They took recess away from us, and I'm just like, what the heck? Like, I'm 14, I don't get to go outside anymore? So I just think removing myself from a classroom for just a couple minutes a day. Like, while we're working here, Professor Collins makes us get up from the computer screens and blink for a second and make sure that we stretch and things like that. Like, just the little things, letting us see the sunlight for a couple minutes, I think would help a lot.
I'm just curious, is school the #1 stress for most people?
Yes, thank you.
Just checking. Yeah, you had to make sure.
So I'm going to try and bounce around a couple of things for with Mafalda's mother's point. With Mafalda's mother's point to activities, I think that's really good because sometimes talking, maybe you just don't want to talk to somebody and you just want to kind of calm down. So I think that's a good point, activities. And then what I believe was Jade and Josh's point and Shannon's point that sometimes people don't want to talk to their parents or their legal guardians or whoever they are because they don't feel like maybe they'll be able to really understand what they're going through. And I feel like that happens a lot where adults say, well, I've been through this before when you were my age, those sorts of things, but I feel like sometimes being a teenager is very different now than it is being a teenager at least when my parents were teenagers. So I feel like sometimes parents will forget what it was like being a teenager. That was so long ago. Right now they're focusing on their responsibility, so they're really able to do that. And then to Anna's point, I think it is kind of hard to define what like a fun activity is because I like working out for fun. And most people are like, that's like nobody wants to do it. So yeah, I think it's kind of hard to just put a specific label on that, but I definitely think it's something important to talk about.
We have a parent here.
Yes, I'm Mafalda's father. And I'd like to congratulate all of the parents here. You've done a tremendous job with these children.
I agree.
But I'd like to put a little more stress on you. They need you to observe what's going on from a distance. Not necessarily in their face, but observe what happens after school. And engage at the proper time with what may be bothering them, what they're seeing. Let them talk, like they're doing now. And you're gonna find out of them out of babes. Tremendous things. I'm a former journalism major, Fordham U, so I am loving this. I did not see my father going this way. I noticed when that situation occurred at her school, going back to the suicide attempt, we discussed it for days. I saw how it annihilated her emotionally. And I don't know that the school was able to deal with it. They had counselors, but it has to go much deeper than that. You talk about causes, effects, coping strategies. It has to happen. And our children need to have these mechanisms to deal with things like serious stuff, suicide. There is no coming back from suicide. And I think that they understand it. I Again, congratulations, parents. You're doing a tremendous job with your children.
Thank you.
Ditto off of the dad, and being a parent, I think what some of our children are not saying is that we ourselves we cause them to be stressed. So I think the awesome responsibility and the awesome challenge is to not give up on them and to parent from a distance, which is very challenging in 2019 because of so much that's going on. So you are protective, but more importantly, I think the most important skill that I have as a parent is to listen and to accept Jade for who she is and to allow her to explore and be her best self. And that came with me. Sometimes I have to apologize. I had to go back and say, I'm sorry because I was wrong. Of course, I was raised in a totally different generation where I didn't even say the word lie. So I said story. So, and this generation is very up in your face and everything social media, but that's not the time we're in. So I do her a disservice if I parent her the way that I was parented. Although I have no manual, I don't have a manual of how to parent her, but I think the most important thing is that sometimes we have our own pressures and stresses on them that they can't even tell us. Because we have to listen more and sometimes just go in your own room and cry and then come back and just take it and listen, because sometimes they're telling you a lot. I mean, I have a talker, so she's telling me some stuff and I passed out 2 times. I'm standing up straight looking at her, but I'm on the floor really. So I just think the challenge for parents is that you're not giving up on your children because you're allowing them to express who they are, to be who they are. But the most important tool we can have in 2019 is to listen, talk less.
We have an adult here, and then we need to unfortunately wrap up. Excellent. Can I just ask one quick question before you, if you don't mind? Just sort of show of hands, do the parents think that this generation is dealing with more stress than we did?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry.
You still ahead. Hi, this is kind of what I wanted to talk about. You guys have done an amazing job, and you are all dealing with a lot more than we did. You have so many other things coming to you, in addition to social media. You have a whole ton of information you have to navigate, and your homework is ridiculous. It's so much. I honestly, as you can hear, I'm from a different continent. I don't understand the need for all this homework. So you have a lot to deal with. So give yourselves a break. Yes, parents, we want you to have the best grades. We may not understand everything. We do want you to have the best grades, but I think as parents we have to sometimes encourage these young ones when they fail. And if you have a bad grade, it's not the end of the world. You just pick up and start the next day. But what I really wanted to emphasize, and you all talked about, was coping, having some sort of guide, having a good schedule. That is being organized. That will take you through the rest of your life. So you really need to stay on schedule and being organized, and maybe have people in your schools help out the freshmen who come in to learn how to schedule their time properly. That would probably help you guys as well. Thank you very much. That's
Excuse me, could I just say one thing? Okay, so at my high school, I
agree on this one.
Yeah, that's wrong. Okay, so I go to Princeton High School, and that area is very, very stressful. I feel that everyone is competing against each other to be the best in every aspect, in music, in sports, in academics, in so many things. And I think that's why a lot of kids don't tell people that they're struggling, because they feel like they're gonna fall behind. And also just going off of like the extracurriculars, I know Anna said that students should make more clubs and try to do certain things, but I feel like kids in my school, like it's a predominantly white area, there are minorities in my school, and a lot of people feel that they're not going to be good enough or accepted, and people don't talk about that, so I just wanted to mention that.
I think we've got to wrap it up, and I want to make sure Ms. Collins has time to explain when these films are going to be shown for everybody. But I just want to say I'm really impressed. You guys did a great job with your work. And as a panel. Thank you for a standing ovation. Yes, I know. I would say. And also for the parents, I second that. I think you all did a great job. Congratulations. Thank you very much. Ms. Collins, when is the, tell us.
So, first of all, congratulations, students, and thank you, our guest panelists. Wonderful work. We've enjoyed having your children working with us so much. There are video projects which have an extensive range of really challenging topics. That presentation will be for parents on Sunday at 1 o'clock. You'll join us for lunch. And then we will be able to enjoy their video projects, and you'll be able to see their written work as well. So we hope to see you Sunday afternoon. And Professor Hornick?
I just want to tell everyone you have an opportunity right now to talk to these experts over here. So I hope that you guys can just converge after this conference, like right now, and start talking to people we're doing the work with. It's so important.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.